You've got, now that Al's here, we can get started. Look in your folders and you'll see the copy of the subcommittees. Y'all look at them real quick. We've got 2 new members and we've added them. The rules, look at them again real quick and we'll get started in about a minute or 2. All right, we've got a quorum, so we're going to get started. Does all the members have their folders? Anybody not have a folder? Representative Gardner, just come in. We'll let her get her folder. But while she's getting her folder, we need to welcome 2 new members to our committee. And I'm going to give them an opportunity real quick to tell us where they're from. And let me just say congratulations. We're glad to have you. Representative Prince, you're now on.
Hey, thank you, Chairman. I'm Representative Brian Prince out of the District 127, which represents Jefferson and Richmond County. Thank you for having me.
And he's new to the House, too, so y'all will give him a good welcome. This is his first session, so we're glad to have you. And we also now have a new vice chairman of our committee and a new member, even though she's not new to the House. Vice chairwoman, I guess I should say, Valerie Clark.
Thank you. Again, it's Valerie Clark, House District 101, which is Lawrenceville and Swanee. And I am so proud and pleased to be here to work with our chairman.
Well, thank you.
Work for our chairman, right?
There, hey, I like that even better. You're starting off right. Yeah. Everything started out just right. Our conversation ahead of time worked out pretty good. Hey.
Thank you, Secretary Will.
Yeah, sorry, Bubba. Hey. All right, we're also going to before we start, we're going to assign most all of you know every road naming that comes in will go to resolution subcommittee, and that is chaired by Chairwoman Sims, and she will be handling those. But we also have another resolution that has been introduced by Representative Howard, House Resolution 1037, and I'm also going to put that in her subcommittee as well for her to have a hearing on. So if y'all are on that committee, she will be contacting y'all as well about that. House Bill 694 by Representative Waits. That one is going in Chairman Geisinger's committee. So that will go to Railway and Transit. Yes, that's the Railway and Transit that you are the vice chairman of, by the way. Yes, ma'am. And so those bills have been assigned to those subcommittees. You can talk to the chairman of those subcommittees about the hearing. Also, Josh, where's our the bill that got transferred over to us, Representative Settlers? What? You don't have it in here? That bill is going to be assigned to Chairman Burns' subcommittee. Highway regulations. I guess I'm going to assign it to him. He does a decent job over there at Game and Fish. Maybe he can handle that one. Hey. All right. Who's 28? Representative Gardner.
I just wondered what that bill is. Is it 175?
95.
195. Thank you.
195, yes. Representative Williams.
Just a clarification from the Williams caucus.
Yes, sir.
The AJ is really AL.
AJ, okay.
And that was.
Well, we were just trying to bump you up a little bit.
I know you thought I was going to read this.
I'm glad you caught that. We apologize, and we will get that changed. And he may be a junior. Are you? No. All right. So at this time, we will now hear House Bill 775 by Representative Carson. Where do you want to stand or you want to sit? All right. Let's see which one of that should have you on up there. Yeah.
Is that on?
Yeah.
We on? Okay.
You were on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you hearing this bill. I have more copies of the code, section 3299. If not everyone has a copy of this, should we pass these?
We don't have them in the folders, but does anybody want to see that code section? Are they in the folder?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Does anybody not have a copy other than me? You only have one?
That's enough for you.
All right. I got it now, yeah.
It is.
First bill in transportation. We won't haze you too bad then.
Thank you.
Other than the fact the chairman didn't get a copy of the code section, but other than that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to present to you House Bill 775. This actually is what this is doing is getting rid of some Population Act language dating back to the 1950 census, believe it or not. As you might know, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I also serve on intergovernmental coordination. That committee has been asked by the leadership of the House to basically take a look at all the population acts that are on the books. A population act is a way of banding a certain county or municipality and make a law apply to populations greater than amount or greater than a certain amount and less than a certain amount or just less than a certain amount of population. It's a way of targeting a law within the state of Georgia to a particular city or county that meets certain population criteria as of a certain census. And as you may also know, the Georgia Supreme Court has declared those types of population acts unconstitutional. Really, all this is a cleanup to get rid of this Population Act language. And so what the bill basically says is, as used in this code section, the term metropolitan area means the area of a city, and you can read it right there, within the state, together with the area suburban to each city, as each suburban area shall be more specifically delimited by the General Assembly. If you want to read along in the code section, this is the one pager that I have. The words, I'll go over the words that I am getting rid of. And by the way, just as clarification, you might ask, Representative Carson, why aren't you just striking out those words? If you want to just get rid of the Population Act, why aren't you just striking out the words? I actually sat with our friends in Legislative Council, Wayne Allen and Jeremy Ayers, and Wayne Allen explained to me that when you have a Population Act, the only things you can do is you can repeal it and replace it, or you can leave it alone. That's my understanding from Leg Council. So I will read off the wording that I am eliminating from the code if you want to follow along with me. I'm on the page that quotes section, code section title 32-9-9. I'm in paragraph C. Second line, I'll read off the words that I'm eliminating, which are whose population, as determined by the federal census of 1950, or any later federal census shall have exceeded 43,617 persons, such a city hereafter being referred to as a central city, and then I'm eliminating the word a central city. And again, based on Legislative Council's strict guidance on this, they won't allow us to just eliminate those words. They're asking us to replace those words, should I say, paragraph C.
Any quick? Representative Gardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Since I represent the metropolitan area that used to have 43,000 people and now has a few more, I would like to tell you that I support this effort. I know that there are a number of bills that are going to impact on Fulton County and the city of Atlanta. And when you look at repealing them, it's much more complicated than one would have guessed. So I support what you're doing. I just wondered if you had had discussions with the attorneys at MARTA to ensure that there were no unintended consequences of this
No,
repeal?
I have not. This Atlanta is covered by this code section, and they're going to still be able to have a transit authority. It's just that instead of just Atlanta and possibly Macon having this in 1950, every city in Georgia would be open to doing this. Now, obviously, approving it and funding it and so forth would be up to them. But this removes just the population language, which essentially restricts other counties and cities in Georgia that don't meet this criteria as of the 1950 census.
And I'm sure there were good reasons to do that in 1950. I can't
Very
think
well
of it.
maybe.
I can't think of any
Gardner.
right now, but
Thank you.
or that any exist today. But I guess I would just reserve judgment to make sure that I had heard from MARTA that they were fully in agreement with that this didn't change anything for them.
Okay. Any other questions for the author of the bill? Chair hearing none at this time. Chair will entertain a motion. I have a move do pass and second. Any further discussion? Chairman Hamilton.
Mr. Chairman, I have one quick question of the author. It seems like I signed this bill, and I'm just curious why my name's not on there. You let a freshman and a sophomore his name move up in front of mine?
I wanted to make sure it would pass, sir.
At the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion we table this bill.
You have the authority. Hey. Okay. All right. We have a motion second. Any other further discussion? All right. All those in favor, let it know by saying aye. All those opposed? All right. Moves do pass.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
sure.
Representative Gardner, if you don't mind, do you have the attorney's name at MARTA? Would you like me to run this by them, or? Okay.
Yeah, they have more than just one.
I'd like to know what their feedback is. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Headed to rules. All right. House Bill 774 by Representative Watson. You can sit there if you want to, or you can come down front. This is your first bill for this committee. Come down front. Come on down front. Does everybody, actually there is a handout that the chair does have. Does everybody have the handout? Any member? Not. Okay. Representative Watson.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring before you today House Bill 774. It's basically some housekeeping legislation for GDOT. It's basically got 8 sections, as you'll see, and I'll just kind of go through section at a time so you know what we're talking about. Sections 1 and 2 are basically dealing with changes in the reporting timelines for the SSTP progress reports and benchmark reports. We're going to change those from semi-annually to annually reports. The department feels by doing this, it'll of course save state dollars. It will also allow the personnel to focus on one report, annual report. They spend the rest of the year looking at other planning activities through the year. It'll also put it in line with the state's fiscal report so that we can have an overall view at the year end of how the progress went. Sections 3 and 4 deal with county and municipal increases in their caps on bidding contracts. In 2012, the General Assembly authorized the department to increase their limit from $100,000 to $200,000, and in this section we want to allow the counties and cities to increase theirs from $20,000 to $200,000. There's not much you can do nowadays with $20,000, so we want to give them the flexibility to do that. If you saw the commissioner's budget report, he talked about quick response projects, and that's an example of these projects. As you'll see in your handout, they have been very beneficial to the state, and we think we can be very beneficial to cities and counties as well. Section 5 is just basically a language cleanup. Currently, GDOT maintains all the accident reports, so we're going to strike accident reports from the required records that DDS is maintaining, just to clean up their required language requirements and just keep it consistent with statute. Section 6 is dealing with flashing yellow and red arrows. These are new, so we're just defining traffic behavior when you approach these signals. They're not currently in statute, and that's what we want to do here. Section 7 is dealing with ramp meters. What we're doing here is the provision is allowing drivers to proceed without stopping if the device is properly signed and operating in an unactivated dark mode. People are already doing this, but we just want to clarify it and put it into statute. Section 8 increases the speed limit on urbanized interstates from 65 to 70 miles an hour. This wouldn't be an automatic change. Studies would have to be done to make sure that this was okay to do. There are a lot of states around us that are doing it, and it's just kind of getting Georgia to be like the states around us. That's all I've got on that. I've also got Josh Waller here from the department with me to help answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Josh, you got anything you want to say, or you just want to?
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank Representative Watson and everyone who co-signed onto the bill. Just basically, we did a code review process, and we do that annually. And sort of these are the items that operationally we think, small items tied together, hopefully can achieve some meaningful impact. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Representative Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a serious question, but before we start, since there was confusion with Representative Williams' name earlier, I want to confirm you're not the Dr. Watson, right?
That's right.
Okay. I want to make sure we've got the right Watson. Okay. I'm looking at sections 2 and 3 that deals with the increase from $20,000 to $200,000 for the local governments to be able to move forward with contracts without negotiating. I suspect, and I just want you to confirm, this is would be subject to whatever the local jurisdiction's financial policies may be. So if a city or county did have a bid policy locally that required them to go out at $50,000 or $100,000 or what have you, this would not in any way supersede that local policy, would it?
No, it shouldn't. Basically, this is in Title 32, so you're talking about Title 32 funds that the agency, that the counties and cities receive. So it's really, that's the only thing that's impacting our Title 32 funds.
Very good. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for, I'm curious. Section 8, line 217. It's got a population piece in it, by the way, of 50,000 or more. But help me with this. I know some areas, but coming into Atlanta, in most areas, it's been so long since I've been able to get up to 70 miles per hour. It's more than I average 18. Tell me what your reasoning is. What will 70 miles per hour do, that 65 miles per hour do except, lower some gas mileage. But tell me what's your reasoning here?
Helps keep the chairman from getting an even bigger speeding ticket.
It does help. Now, I know some areas where I'd really like to see it, in fact, but
Certainly in an urbanized area where you've got traffic congestion that's not going to allow you to go 70, it's probably not going to be 70. Obviously, you look at things like road design to make sure that the road is actually designed for 70 miles an hour. I mean, today, the limit's 65 on urbanized, but there are areas of the interstate where it's 55 just because of road design and conditions. It's just not appropriate. However, as the state has grown and we've seen urbanized areas go from just a suburban area to exurbs, you are technically catching counties and cities where really you could go 70 miles, traffic is free flowing, but it's now because it's become urbanized, you're artificially having to hold them down at 65. So, we looked at our neighbors and we saw a lot of our neighbors have their urbanized maximum set at 70. So it seemed appropriate to take the step just so that we have the flexibility where it's appropriate. And again, the department looks into studies to make sure, our first and top priority is to make sure that we're being safe and protecting lives on the road. And that's why you see in areas 55. So that's sort of the rationale is to give us that flexibility so we're not arbitrarily tied just because it's going through an urbanized area where it could be 70, it's artificially held at 65.
okay. All right, thank you.
Let's see. Who's 14? Where am I at? Chairman McCall.
Representative Watson, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you explain in a language that you would be talking to one of your pepper truck drivers? Line 138 through 145, where it talks about vehicular traffic shall stop and remain stopped, allow pedestrian to cross the roadway and the crosswalk. The pedestrian is lawfully within the intersection or adjacent crosswalk at the time of such signal is exhibited. When a pedestrian is upon half the roadway upon which a vehicle is traveling, when a pedestrian is approaching within one lane of half the roadway on the vehicle traveling into which it is turning. Can you explain that other than lawyer language?
Hey, you might have me on that one, but
What you said was great.
yeah.
Does he run over the guy in the crosswalk?
He might.
All right. Who's 18? Who's 18? Chairman Reinders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Watson. Do you know on lines 68 and 93 on the 20,000 to 200,000, do you know when the 20,000 was originally put into language? Josh?
I don't. I'll have to check and see.
Yeah, and such a large increase. If you were a betting man, when would we see another increase in this?
I don't. I think that ultimately we picked the 200,000 because that's what the General Assembly agreed to for the Department of Transportation 2 years ago. And the rationale there is that when the commissioner highlighted the project types with quick response, that's about the neighborhood of projects that you can do with the quick response. And so that is sort of the factor we're looking at. It's whether the state's doing or the local government's doing. The turn lane is going to cost the same.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I'm a big fan of the quick response, by the way. What I am concerned about is, you said the neighborhood. I don't want the neighborhood to go to 300,000 next year, 400,000 the following year, 500,000 the following year. Just because, for a variety of reasons, maybe the economy is improving.
Understood. I don't. At this point, we've not made any efforts to increase the department's amount to 200,000. I mean, at this juncture, we're probably looking at quick response projects being the main type of projects that we're wanting to do.
So if it said for quick response purposes only, then that would solve what you'd want it to do, really.
Well, quick response is what we call this process. I mean, I guess you have to go and define in law what quick response means.
Okay, I'm just a little.
Again, I think the other item here is this is Title 32 funds that local and city governments receive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only place where this
Does it say for Title 32 funds only?
Because we're in Title 32, those would be the funds that the department provides to cities and counties, or only Title 32.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 224. Chairman Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is not on this bill, so that's why I have a question. And not to beat a dead horse, but it's about the LMIG funds. I just want a point of clarification. We're going to be doing a presentation next month in my community, both to the city and the county for this. How do they currently track that? I guess what I'm trying to do is, let's say a community gets $1 million in funds, of these funds. Do they track those enough to know that when they do a $200,000 non-bid repair, that they've taken 200 and so there's only 800 left, or how is that tracked by the department, or do you just write them a check and then they can use it? Are they required to track that? I'm just trying to find, or does it just get put into kind of the general fund?
Basically, the way it has worked now is that the LMIG program now functions basically as a direct grant to the cities and counties to allow them to use it for transportation purposes. You know, in the past, with state aid, it used to be the case that it would be a project specific, department approves, you go through a whole process. The decision here was these are Title 32 funds that need to be spent on roads and bridges. There's a formula that's determined that sends that money out. And basically, they're given that guidance. We stay involved with them, but basically the discretion is theirs. And then we have an auditing process in place where we go back to make sure that they're complying with the law. So they are provide the flexibility to make those decisions, and then we would come in sort of an audit capacity to make sure that they're complying with the law.
Okay. What I'm trying, and again, I understand the intent. I'm just trying to find out if, when they spend those funds, whether they or have been tracking that. So maybe that $1 million was already spent on another project, but now they have a quick response fund and say, well, we're going to go ahead and do $200,000 and we're going to take it out of the LMIG funds, when the reality is the LMIG funds have already been spent on something else.
I mean, that ultimately get down to the city and county.
Okay, so they can do that if they do that, if for some reason, intentional and unintentional, y'all will then come back in the audit process, verify that, and then what do you do?
Well, I think what you'd see happen, obviously, when the county receives the check, it's going to go into a bank account, and at that point, the color of money, we're not necessarily keeping track of the color of money. What we would do is say, look, you were provided X number in fiscal year 12. How did you spend that money? And you would track it back to that amount to make sure that the amount that they were provided by the state through LMIG was used in the way that it was supposed to. Now, to your question of a county or city that was, let's say, spending it in a way that was out of compliance, obviously there could be a requirement to either repay the money.
Josh, hold on a second. Pull that microphone on closer.
To either repay the money, or you could potentially withhold future LMIG funds as a penalty.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is the way I understand that, and you've made it clear, is that if someone in the county wanted to not keep track of it, just unintentionally or whatever, and spend it, they could always come back and say, if they had more than $200,000 of LMIG money, they could justify a project and say that was LMIG money, even though maybe that money was spent someplace else.
They could, but I guess in theory, if they had $1 million and they did 6 projects at $200,000 quick response, well, then they were clearly out of compliance because they didn't have more than $1 million.
Helps on the way.
And Commissioner, I'm trying to understand this because
Commissioner, you got to get to the mic. We're on TV, or you can go up and stand up at the other one, and I'll turn you on up there. How's that?
It's meant to be a friendly question, really. I'm just trying to understand the process.
I certainly try to avoid TV, but
so I think the question is, if we're going to give them go from 20,000 to 200,000, I just want to know what the process is to make sure that we don't find communities suddenly having a lot of emergencies where they're awarding contracts out there. That's my only thing I want to make sure of.
Certainly. So just for your recollection, obviously in the local maintenance improvement grant program, there's a match component. And so when they apply for their LMIG dollars, when they're told how much they're going to receive, they give us a list of projects that they're going to apply that to and how they're going to meet the match. So they provide that, and at the local level, they do put those out for bid, as you indicate. At the end of the year, when we tell them at the end of the year, your next year's formula amount, they're required to submit to us a report of that they've completed the work, it was done in time, and how they achieved it, and that they did it on that project. If they vary from the projects that they gave us on the original list, they also have to submit that to us. So we are monitoring, kind of, as you said.
Okay, so if my county has $1 million and they give you a list of $1 million on those projects, then
hopefully it's $1.3 million. But yeah.
Right, I understand. But how do they suddenly then have $200,000 of additional LBIG money that they can spend in an emergency?
It's not LMIG. It would just say that they could use this method with their $1.3 million. They could bid one of those projects. If it was under $200,000, they could use the negotiated process. Now, for us, we negotiate contracts under $200,000, but we still get 3 bids.
Right.
This just doesn't mean we put it into a formal letting and go through the plan review process. We still receive 3 bids on all of our jobs. And even in a negotiated pricing scheme, we still use the bid process or receive 3 bids.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure I've answered your question, but I think this would just, when they receive that, if they had a $200,000 project on their list, they could utilize this tool.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Brett, is that you? Representative Harrell. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Just one follow-up. Was the increase from the local governments, or does this increase, giving the flexibility to local governments, benefit Georgia DOT? And if so, how does it benefit the department?
It benefits the local governments, because right now the department already has that authority to go up to $200,000. We're trying to mirror that with Title 32 funds that the cities and counties receive.
But did they make the request? I don't guess it's here or there, but just as curious.
It's something that actually our state aid, the director of our state aid, identified.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Ryder.
Thank you. One follow-up. I just want to make sure that I understand what we're doing here. If I wanted to put in a turning lane at a cost of $180,000 in my local county, all right, currently, if this doesn't pass, I still get quick response funds, do I not?
If the department is letting the project.
Yeah, but currently I don't lose something because I don't have $200,000, correct?
If the department, if you're a county or city using your LMIG funds,
I'm getting a lot of yeses behind you, so that's why. That's why I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I think the answer
if I'm putting a turning lane in, it's $180,000. We don't pass this bill.
Correct.
I still don't. I don't not get my turning lane.
I think what Josh was trying to say is
you do get your.
I still get my turning lane.
It's a matter of
it
time.
would be a let in an open. Yeah, it would go to an open bid process.
Okay, but I don't lose my project.
No, sir.
Correct.
Okay. Now, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, under this, my county doesn't have to call paving company A or paving company B to see if they can do it at 170, 170,000, or 190,000. If this were to pass, they could choose either one because they don't have to bid it. Would that be correct?
In theory, yeah, they could. I guess the question for them was if they chose someone they knew was going to be higher, they're going to lose out. There's going to be less money to be spread around. But and the practice that we.
But under this, if my county chose to spend 190, if currently, and again, I'm just trying to understand. Currently, if it's $20,000, they would have to bid it if it's more than that.
Correct.
And now what we're saying is if it's 160 or 190, I don't have to bid it.
Correct.
Okay.
Representative Williams.
This is Representative Watson. This is. You thought this was a little house cleaning bill, didn't you? But
it is just a little simple house.
A little simple bill. But it raised something. I just wanted to go on record for this. I don't have a problem with the bill, by the way, with the exception of I get a little nervous at $200,000 non-bid. I mean, that makes me shaky. You start talking about serious money. I can see $20,000, but you start talking $200,000 projects non-bid. I mean, a lot of times, if this is, and I'm not saying anybody 159 will do it, but if my buddy is in the business, I'm not going to worry about what it's going to cost me next year because my buddy going to get $190,000 bid free. I don't want to see us having to deal with this in a couple of years because of unintended consequences. You're starting to talk serious money when you start talking $200,000 without bidding process.
This, make sure I'm correct now, this bill doesn't affect, if the local jurisdictions, they've got their process in place, city or county government, their bid process in place, they still have to follow that process. This just allows them to be able to, and with the cost of construction prices going through the roof, it's not hard for us to get to $200,000 on pretty much about any project out there today. you can go ahead.
And I think, and that's part of the impetus for the change, is obviously the point of the balance between making sure you're not having corruption, making sure you're having competitive bidding, is that we've seen these type projects which are meaningful to communities where it's putting in a turn lane, and the turn lane, that general cost is going to be the same whether it's state or county government. And this demand among the population, obviously we're trying to do the big things to move the transportation needle, but those small projects that can mean a lot, whether it's a turning lane or a passing lane, and being able to get it done quickly. So you identify the problem, you go in there, you do as quickly as possible so that the community feels like we're moving the needle in some way, shape, or form. And so one of the ways to do that, to eliminate some of the time and make it happen, is with a quick response. So it's achieving that balance between saying a $20,000 limit and knowing that if you've identified a problem, you've got Title 32 funds available through LMIC to do it, that you can go out there and do it fast and get it done and hopefully help your community. I think that's the balance we're trying to achieve. And just because when you're thinking about the type of projects, the type of money, and where that, because remember, Title 32 motor fuel money is constitutionally guaranteed towards certain things. You can't just spend it on anything. So you're talking about road and bridge projects. So there's certain universe of road and bridge projects. The department's currently doing it 200, and that's why we picked the same number for counties and cities.
How many projects would you estimate that you would do in the state if it was at $20,000 road and bridge projects? There's probably none.
There might be something, but I mean.
Okay. Oh, I agree. Listen, it's not without reservation. I mean, I understand. Anytime we look at this, I mean, I get it, but I also understand that right now where we're at is cost of everything's gone through the roof. We're trying to, you get the calls, I get the call. Chairman Reiner, I mean, all of us end up getting the calls from our local governments about needing something, and it's never we need it next year or the year after. It's we need it now, and that's for the quick response, being able to come in and get the project done. They go out and build a school out in the middle of nowhere in your county like my county. Well, yeah, I agree. Yeah, to us, it's God's country. But there's a lot of people that'd be in nowhere, and then they come to us wanting that turn lane, that decel lane, or new business or industry that hopefully we can get down our way would come in, and that would be a situation. So I think that's where they're coming from. But I will allow Representative Gardner.
Well, this particular section seems to have created a lot of discussion. I just wondered where it came from. I mean, how does it benefit the department, and who requested this change?
So basically, when we went through the code revision process with every office head in GDOT, and every office head who works in those areas identified issues. This was identified by our state aid director,
so
who works with the counties.
Not from the municipalities or the counties.
It was not.
Representative Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my initial question to the representative, and you confirmed it, was that this is not going to in any way supersede local bid policy. So the local jurisdiction is going to have processes in place, hopefully to ensure that there's not any inappropriate activity. It'll be left to them. You know, one thing we didn't talk about, but I agree that $20,000 is so low. In addition to making it difficult to do a project today, there is a certain amount of cost in doing any kind of a bid and RFP. And even if it's only $2,000, at $20,000, 10% of your money is consumed, you know, with a bid process. So I think again, so long as it does, my concern was really superseding local policies, and I understand this does not. So the local county commission and the municipality needs to have financial policies in place to ensure that, you know, they're spending their money properly. And if so, then I think that this is a interesting proposal. So thank you.
Chairman Reiner.
Let me just have a question with you, Mr. Harrell. Based on that, and the ultimate local controllers let them do whatever they want. That would be the ultimate local control. Why have a figure at all?
Well, can I respond?
You can respond.
Well, and I think that's a valid question. Although the General Assembly, in their wisdom, a year or so ago, put a limit on a department that spends arguably close to $2 billion a year doing projects, whereas I doubt many of our cities or counties spend at that same level. But you know, we're the ones that put that limit in place at the department. So I think what we heard from the department and the state aid director is they were just trying to match a limit that the General Assembly had already established.
And my intellectual point would be is that, you know what, they can put their own guidelines in, whether it be 200,000 or a million. That would be my intellectual point. And unless you've dealt with some of those small communities on things like community block grants, where they don't have a local engineer and they have to rely on someone else to put in how much that piping per square foot is or something like this, they frankly have no way to trust and verify. This, to me, is, to a certain extent, is at least a little way of creating a little balance of accountability. But it does it at the cost of local control is what causes me a little heartburn, because I'd love to see all locals just sit there and have their own guidelines on how to bid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Representative Harrell, you any more comments?
Oh, no, sir.
Yeah, okay. Representative Watson, you got anything you want to?
I don't have a thing.
Simple little old housekeeping bill. That's all this is. Hey, welcome to transportation. You've been on it for a year. Hey, Josh, you got anything else you'd like to add?
I do not. Appreciate
Commissioner? And how about our planning director back there? To those of you who may be new, or Commissioner Keith Golden, stand up. I know Representative Prince is new, and Toby Carr is our planning director, and so we're glad to have both of them here today. Anything you want to say, Toby? Still, you nothing? I mean, after the confirmation hearing you had, you don't want to say anything?
Just good to be with you.
We're glad to have both of you. All right. Having had all the testimony, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion. Have a motion do pass. I have a second. Any further discussion? Chair hearing no further discussion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed. Congratulations, Representative Watson. Moves on to rules. Thank you. And at this time, we will. Those of you who are on those subcommittees, look for your chairman contacting you. And we generally meet Thursdays at 2. That's what we're going to try to continue to do this year. We're not going to change. So having no further discussion, no burdens, we are adjourned. Thank y'all for coming.